Vault 13 is dying. The water chip, which up until now has powered its purification system, has given up the ghost, leaving the vault with a limited supply of water, only lasting a few months. The Overseer, Jakerin, selects one unlucky dweller amongst the entire population to venture out into the wasteland to search for a replacement water chip. With the fate of the entire vault resting on his shoulders, the dweller leaves the only home him and his ancestors have known since the Great War, steps out into the darkness of the cave surrounding Vault 13. Unbeknownst to him, this humble quest will decide the fates of millions, and set the stage for the rise of the greatest nation California has seen in over 200 years. After battling his way through the rodent inhabitants of the cave, the dweller steps forth, to behold for the first time in his life natural sunlight. He exits the cave and enters the alien wasteland in search of his people's salvation. The Vault Dweller sets out on his quest in the wasteland, having no leads for a new water chip other than the location of Vault 15, the closest vault located east of Vault 13. The Dweller marches eastward in search of Vault 15, buried somewhere in the sands of Southern California. Along the way he discovers Shady Sands, a small farming settlement built in the desert, and the first human inhabitants outside the vault the Dweller has ever seen. There the Dweller would assist the townspeople with their rad scorpion infestation, and recruit a man known as Ian to his party. Though discovering no sources about a water chip in Shady Sands, the Dweller moves on towards Vault 15. Though Vault 15 would not fare much better. After discovering the location, any hopes of a functioning water chip were dashed, as Vault 15 had suffered a massive earthquake, and the vault's water chip was now buried beneath tons and tons of rubble in its deepest depths. Disheartened, the Dweller returned to Shady Sands, where they discovered that Aradash, the mayor of Shady Sands, had his daughter kidnapped by a tribe of raiders living nearby, known as the Khans. The Dweller would then go on to assault the Khans' camp to rescue Tandy. In this, the Vault Dweller would utterly decimate the Khans as a faction, killing all but one of their members, a young child who hid during the fighting. The Vault Dweller's utter decimation of the Khans reduced them as a faction for decades to come, with the Vault Dweller even killing the leader of the Khans, Garl Deathhand. Although the Vault Dweller had utterly ravaged the Khans, they would later resurface as the New Khans, appearing in New California decades later, only for the Chosen One, a descendant of the Vault Dweller, to destroy them once more. Tandy and her father Aradash would go on to form the New California Republic, uniting many of the cities in Southern California into a powerful nation, rivaling that of the pre-war United States. Though they would never see the Dweller after his rescue of Tandy, they would dedicate a large statue in the NCR capital in honor of their savior. The Vault Dweller would then move south in search of a water chip, traveling first to the city of Junktown, where he would recruit the Desert Ranger Tycho and his faithful companion Dogmeat. Finding no sign of a water chip in Junktown, the Dweller would continue on to the Hub, the biggest city in the wasteland at that time, built out of the ruins of Barstow, California. It was here that the Vault Dweller's party would get their best lead on a potential water chip, learning from the Hub's water merchants that the only town in the wasteland that refused water shipments from them was the ghoul city of Necropolis, surmising that in order for them to be able to refuse a water shipment, they would either have to have a water chip of their own, or some other form of water purification. The Vault Dweller and his team set their sights on the city of Necropolis. After a stint in the Hub, guarding caravans and dealing with local creatures, the Vault Dweller's entourage finally made their way to Necropolis. Built above a city that had once been called Bakersfield, Necropolis was founded by the denizens of Vault 12, a vault which had a malfunctioning door by design of Vault Tech. The entire population had been ghoulified, and after the war had made the city their home. After decades of rule by a ghoul named Seth, strange mutants had arrived in the city from the north. Stronger and faster than any mutants previously seen, they raided the city of Necropolis hoping to find pure strain humans, only finding ghouls. Though largely pulling out of the city, they left a small garrison, an area known as the Watershed, where Necropolis previously gathered much of their water from an underground well. Working together with a pacifist faction of ghouls in Necropolis' sewers, they agreed to let the Vault Dweller take the water chip from Vault 12, on the condition that they clear out the mutants garrisoning the Watershed, allowing Necropolis to continue to have a supply of water flowing from its well. The Dweller honored this promise, and after fighting through Necropolis' sewer system against feral ghouls and rats, they eventually raided and took the water chip from Vault 12, using the sewer system to then enter the Watershed, where the mutant garrison remained. The Vault Dweller and his companions then attack the mutants of the watershed, going up against a force of half a dozen super mutants with military-grade weapons. It was a tough battle. Though they were eventually victorious, they lost Ian in the fighting, with him being burned to death by a super mutant with a flamer. But Ian's sacrifice ensured the survivability of both Vault 13 and Necropolis. Despite what the Vault Dweller has done, Set showed no love for him. Equally as happy to drive out the man who had saved the city as he was to let him in. Despite their setbacks, the Vault Dweller and his companions had destroyed the mutant threat in Necropolis, and had retrieved a functioning water chip. With that, they set off back north towards Vault 13, and back to the Overseer. The Overseer was overjoyed with the Dweller's return, and the water chip from Vault 12 was a perfect match. It appeared as though the day had been saved. However, there was something which troubled the Overseer from the Vault Dweller's report. The Overseer was disturbed by the reports of the mutants in the watershed. Never before had anyone in the Wasteland seen mutants like these, once they were disciplined and trained and organized into units. Never before had they seen mutants with this level of cohesion, discipline, with this level of unity. And so, the Overseer sent the Vault Dweller and their entourage to fight the entire mutant army by themselves. However, in order to succeed in this endeavor and ensure the safety of the Vault, they would need more help than the meager set of companions they had. As such, they traveled south towards the LA Boneyard, what used to be known as Los Angeles. There, the Dweller and their company encountered the Followers of the Apocalypse, a humanitarian group based out of the old LA Public Library. The Followers had surmised that the mutant attacks were linked in some way to the Children of the Cathedral, a cult which was based out of a local church and had operations based in most of the major cities in the Wasteland. After settling a local issue regarding the extortion of the citizens of Adatum by a group known as the Regulators, and destroying the Deathclaw nest which threatened the Grundrunners, the Vault Dweller and their companions, aided by the Followers of the Apocalypse, infiltrated the Cathedral of the Children. After reaching the lowest levels of the Cathedral, the Vault Dweller endured a psychic attack that would have killed any other human, before he finally stood face to face with the wretched creature at the bottom of the Cathedral. This creature that called itself the Master of the Super Mutant Army and the Holy Flame, the God of the Children of the Cathedral. We don't know exactly how it happened, whether the Vault Dweller used some combination of strength, intelligence, or stealth, but the Master was defeated, with his grotesque cybernetic body eventually failing, destroying the very chair he sat on. However, beneath the cathedral itself there remained an undetonated warhead, set to self-destruct in the event of the Master's death. And after his defeat, it did just that, destroying the cathedral and what remained of the children with it. However, one threat still remained. They had taken out the Master, but the mutant army still existed, far in the northwest. To this end, the Dweller enlisted the help of the Brotherhood of Steel, the most powerful organization in California at the time. With the assistance of several Brotherhood of Steel paladins, the Vault Dweller and their companions assaulted the Mariposa military base, the source of both the FEV and the Super Mutant Army's home base. After fighting their way through ranks upon ranks of heavily armed super mutants, the Dweller's company and the Brotherhood of Steel paladins eventually came face to face with the lieutenant of the Super Mutant Army, the Master's second in command. After defeating him, they set the Mariposa military base to self-destruct, burying it in the forced evolutionary virus under tons of rubble. Following the Mariposa military base's destruction, the Vault Dweller and their company had almost single-handedly saved the entire California wasteland from almost certain destruction at the hands of the Master's mutant army. Despite this though, they were not hailed as heroes upon their return to Vault 13. The Overseer decided that the Vault Dweller had spent too long outside, and that they wouldn't be a good influence on the other dwellers within the Vault. The Vault Dweller was a hero, and he had to leave. Exiled from Vault 13, the Dweller found purpose, leading those who had rebelled against the Overseer and left the Vault after his exile, leading them north into founding their own village, away from California. It was here that the Vault Dweller would grow old, have children, and eventually grandchildren, and after the passing of his dearly beloved, the Dweller would seclude himself and leave the village, venturing out into the wilderness to die away from his children. However, when one story ends, one begins, for one of the Dweller's grandchildren would eventually take up their grandfather's mantle of their Vault 13 jumpsuit and Pip-Boy, and go on to save the wasteland from an even bigger threat than the Master himself.